I am Tiffany, and today I'm bringing you another book review. Pew, pew, pew. Knocking out those books left and right. Yeah. Knocking out those books left and right. Yeah. Getting through a series. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Today's book, I'm getting through another series slowly but surely. I just put the review up for the first book in this series, and I've already finished the second book in this series. I'm just ready to go, so let's go ahead and get to it. This book is by my favorite author, Brandon Sanderson, who's also written Mistborn. It is the second book in the Reckoner series. It is called Firefight, and look how pretty, once again, this cover is. It is so pretty. If you haven't seen my review for Steelheart, I suggest you go check that out. It is the first book. You don't really want to miss details about the first book before you get into the second book. This book has a 4.28 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, which again is incredible, and it is actually higher than the first book, and I must say I completely 100% agree with that. This second book, it is so good, and it just reminds me how awesome Brandon Sanderson is as a writer. It's just I've already started the third book in this series. I just started it though, so I'm not even close to finishing yet. But oh my gosh, intense. It is very intense. For those of you who don't know what in the world this book is or this series is, again, there is the first book review that I have on my channel. I'll leave a link in the description for you. But this is the second book in the series. It follows a character named David who lives in a world that is controlled by epics. Epics are people who gain mysterious powers when a thing that they call calamity appeared in the sky, and they ended up turning evil. So there's no superheroes. All the people who got powers are super villains. It is such a great read. I think I mentioned in my first one, it's very reminiscent of The Boys. If you've seen that, it's a really popular show on Amazon, and it also was a comic book before it was an Amazon show. It's just really awesome. The characters are all super great, well-rounded. Each of them are individual and unique, and I have been plowing through this series because of the fact that it has just kept me on the edge of my seat throughout this entire thing. If you have not read Brandon Sanderson in general, go read Brandon Sanderson. He is such an amazing author. Mistborn is another great series by him. You can see my Brandon Sanderson shelf right here for you. Firefight is such a great follow-up to Steelheart. Definitely raises the bar. Like I said though, there isn't a lot I can tell you without spoiling you because of the fact that it is a second book in the series. So what I suggest is you go read this series, catch up, and then come back here and tell me what you think and talk about all your feels. If you cried, if you laughed, if you were angry, if you hated it, I don't know. Just come back and talk about it. I love talking with you guys about this stuff. That really is all I can say without spoiling you. Go read the books and then come back here. Thank you guys for joining me, non-spoilery people. Come back once you have read this book. It is so worth it. Trust it. Go read it right now. Well, read Steelheart first, but then go read Firefight now. Now. See you soon. Goodbye. Firefight. Oh man, this book. When we left off of Steelheart, we knew Prof was an epic. We knew that Megan was Firefight. We didn't know where she was at. And Chicago had been restored because of the fact that Steelheart had been killed. Now, I did read the novella that came before this called Mitosis. The novella for this series I think is important for you to read just because it helps set up for what this is all about. This book, a majority of it is all about figuring out weaknesses and what exactly can help the Reckoners figure out these weaknesses faster. We find out in Mitosis that what affects the epic Mitosis is actually rock music, and specifically his music from his own band is very effective. Feel like a Pokemon. That was very effective! David is able to make the connection that, hey, that was something from this dude's past that related to his weakness. So maybe the weaknesses relate to something in the epic's own personal lives. And one of the opening scenes in Firefight is them fighting an epic called Sourcefield. And David believes through his research it is Kool-Aid, and it does end up being that, but it takes a super strong amount to actually cause her powers to go haywire. And there's this moment in it that is very surreal and is another part of this book. The moment her powers go away, David sees the desperation in her eyes and the fear. Epics don't usually have that because of the fact that they all have powers. They can kick whoever they want, but if they really want to. But he sees the fear and starts to realize that epics are really like any other person. They are fighting this evil nature within him. He sees it in Prof, top, and really strongly he sees it in Megan. And that's part of again, what this whole book is about. It's weaknesses, but then also dealing with the fact that all epics aren't bad, and that at the end of the day, when you're killing someone, you're killing someone. They're a person. They were someone before all of this. Their nature really isn't their fault. Their powers are what's giving them this horrible, horrible nature about them. And David's thinking definitely changes, especially because of Megan. Setting up that Megan was already hated by Prof and everything made such an interesting dynamic throughout the book. You find out that Megan killed a person in the Reckoner's base in New York who was very important, and because of the fact that she killed a Reckoner, she's considered more than just a traitor. They are trying to hunt her down. But David fell in love with her, and he believes that there is a good nature about her. They all go to New York to figure out the situation with Megan, but really to fight Regalia. Regalia took over New York. It's considered Babylon restored now. In New Chicago, you saw Oppression by Steelheart, but when you come to Babylon restored, aka New York, you see everyone's pretty much relaxing and having a good time and just chilling. But Regalia is still very, very manipulative, and I loved her as a villain. She was such a fun villain. She was very smart, very on top of stuff. I love a good villain. Her power was so intriguing. She was able to control water. She had flooded all of Babylon restored. She could manipulate the water. She could basically see where you were at, and she lied about the scope of how far she was able to view in the water. It was a trick. I was just like, gosh darn it. And I figured that would probably happen, but man, I was still upset because they worked so hard to try and figure out what was outside of her limit. The only limit she really has with it is that she can't see you underwater. She can only see you if there's a surface of a water by you. She can't see you in the water itself. And then you also have the situation of obliteration. Now, he was fun because of the fact that it was a very different type of epic than we dealt with in the past. Steelheart was awful, but Steelheart had control. He wanted to reign. He wanted to control that kingdom. He was oppressive, but he had a government. Obliteration was just plain crazy. You find out he burned an entire city and is now basically terrorizing people of New York. And Regalia, who had actually built up New York for so long, all of a sudden was allowing this to happen, which is the big reason why they're there, is why in the world Regalia changed all of a sudden with that. But oh my gosh, obliteration. I felt actually scared with this dude. He just seemed unhinged throughout it. Whenever he would appear, I did not like it. I'm scared of what's going to happen with him in the future. He got away, and now he knows exactly how to overcome the weaknesses, which we're gonna get to too. But he's scary. He has such a strong power, and now he knows how to overcome his weakness by the end of this. And we have no idea where he's at. I'm gonna assume he's gonna appear in Calamity. That moment where, even though it was a trick, where he's sitting and he's building up power, that was terrifying. It put this just edge in your mind while you were reading the book, because you're thinking about, hey, why don't we just go ahead and kind of stop obliteration now? I mean, he's planning to explode the city. That was my thought process, is that we should just go ahead and take him out. Megan's character was really, really complex in this book, and I loved it because of that. You didn't know if she was really on David's side or not, and you hoped that she was, but you understood where Prof was coming from too, because at the end of the day, if she's tricking David, then heck, he's falling for it big time. And it's this big dilemma. You like David being really lenient towards her, and you want her to be good. And when she opens up about her weakness, which is fire, that's really touching. But you're also again on edge because you don't know if she's lying or not. But on the other hand, you have Prof, who's dealing with his own evil nature, so he's being kind of mean, but you understand him as well and his paranoia, and you don't know. But I love Megan's arc and this whole series so far. I think it's really transformative. And the fact that she came to New York in order to see if her powers could be taken away, and you see that she doesn't want these. She doesn't want these powers. Her power is actually really cool, by the way. It's more than just an illusion type thing. She can pull from other dimensions, parallel universes. She can pull from them and kind of make them present for a short period of time in her timeline there. And that's crazy. That's a hard concept to wrap my brain around, but it's so cool at the same time. It's really, really cool. Now, going back to what Megan is all about, she's trying to get rid of her powers. That whole thing of trying to figure out what in the world was happening with the epics was super interesting. Obliteration and other epics have been enhanced in some way, and you don't get how. And you figure Regalia has a way. Even her limit of how she could only look out across the water for only a certain distance isn't there. David has his notes like down to a T. I appreciate David's notes. I appreciate it as a person who makes a checklist every single day, so I know what to get done in the day. It's messing up David's notes. It's making everything he thinks about them seem wrong. Obliteration being able to teleport quick like that and not give them enough time like David thought, that throws them. And when David finally meets Calamity, So Calamity is an epic, basically, that's up in the sky and just was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna mess with people and I'm gonna give you all powers. That's the big question I think I still have throughout all of this is what's the purpose of Calamity? It's an epic, clearly, but what's the purpose of him being there and causing this? David almost becomes an epic. He becomes a water epic, I believe, or he's supposed to become a water epic. Is David an epic? I don't know. Pretty sure I'm finding out in the next book again, but he got transformed, basically. Then he overcame his fear of water and was able to not become an epic. So I'm trying to see if he is actually an epic. And that, like, he does have the power, but he can fight it because of the fact that he overcame his fear. I do really like the fact that overcoming their fear can help the epics. I want to figure that out a little bit more. Megan overcomes her fear. She thinks David's burning in a building, and even though she set up something so that she doesn't die in the fire itself, still she overcomes her fear and goes into the fire in order to try and save David, even though David's not even there. Because of that, her ability where she comes back to life, she didn't forget David, and her nature didn't completely start over and change again. She didn't have to work through that again. She remembered. So what I'm curious about, I guess, is if they overcome their fear, if it does make them good-natured, or it's just certain epics. Because if certain epics overcome their fears and they don't be good-natured people, then that's really scary, like obliteration. So I want to get into that a little bit more too. If an epic that's evil overcomes their fear, if it makes them more evil, or if it will set up their good nature again. I really liked the new set of characters in this too. That whole group was really great. I am really sad that they died. That whole last scene was super intense, but I love, real quick, Mizzy's positivity throughout this. She's just super fun. She's not an annoying positive character. You know those characters, right? Where they're just so overly happy and so unaware of everything going on around them that it's just annoying and you want to say, okay, that's great that you're smiling all this time, but stop. But Mizzy has a good balance where she is really positive and has this light energy, but she still takes her job seriously and does a great job. And that whole ending that happened with Prof and everything was crazy. David goes and is able to find Regalia, and you find out she's sick, and her whole plan is basically to have a successor. And she decides that it's gonna be her friend and old buddy, Prof, who is the most dangerous epic alive. Maybe besides Calamity, but he turned and my heart just sank. I liked Prof a lot, and you could tell that that was probably going to happen in the next step in the story. But gosh, that visual of him protecting Babylon Restored and then just going and snapping the neck of Val and just killing all of them except for Mizzy. Oh my gosh, that was so crazy and intense, and I am terrified of them battling him in Calamity. And we also don't know where Tia is at, and I wonder, because her and Prof were dating. She loves him, but nobody knows where Tia's at. I don't think she's dead. I think that maybe she's with Prof. That's gonna be intense if she is. I'm scared of them fighting Prof. Really and truly, I am very scared of them fighting Prof. I just don't know how it's gonna go, and I'm just... But I am super curious to see exactly with Calamity what happens with that. Regalia was able to create new epics. That moment where you have the one guy who can turn into a pigeon, David is tracking them down, that whole scene was really cool. It was just such a good book, man. In all honesty, it's just so well-rounded. It has you on edge the whole time. All of the characters, again, are so well-developed. I missed Abraham and Cody, though. That was the only thing. I'm very curious to see what happens in this next book. So much stuff is set up, and the biggest thing I want to know is what is the purpose of Calamity itself. I hope I do. Maybe it's one of those where you don't really need to know, but for me, that's what I want to know. I feel like you'd want to figure out exactly why in the world this thing appeared in the first place, instead of it just being left unanswered. As a reader, I would like to know this information. I thought Dawn's Light was very interesting too. I just really like how this book really does play with the different dynamics and different people who gain these powers. This is a dude who was in a coma and he ended up getting these powers. I guess it's because he's a gifter once again, that he's not evil. And Newton was really interesting too. She didn't really scare me as much, and I kind of wish she was maybe in the book a bit more, but her weakness at the end, again, really hit you hard because she doesn't like compliments, and there's a reason that she doesn't like compliments. What their weaknesses are really reveal something about themselves. In the beginning with Sourcefield, the reason she doesn't like Kool-Aid is because her drink was poisoned when she was young. It's so sad. So it's just stuff like that, and makes it that much more interesting because you are dealing with people who have done awful things, but they weren't always necessarily like this, and you wonder if they can change back. And I think part of it is going going to come down to if they want to. And I think they're going to try and get Prof back to what he was, but I don't know if they're going to. I think they're going to have to kill him, and that's going to be very, very sad. That is all I have to say about this book. This was such a great follow-up. I'm so excited to finish Calamity since I have started it. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any other book, movie, or TV recommendations, you can leave them in the comments below. I always take your suggestions. I write them down, and I make sure to do them. If you want any updates or anything, make sure to go check out my blog. It's tiffanybooksanmovies.blogspot.com. It just gives you updates on video stuff, and then also it gives you updates on acting stuff that's going on. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have an awesome morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of the day you're watching this in. Don't forget to be awesome. All right, goodbye. Whoa!